In the northeast corner of South Africa, ancient cultures once thrived. It's a world where majestic giants now roam free, where gunmen forged trade long before the rule of law. Here, politics shape conservation as iconic species hang on by a thread. As science continues the fight from above, the mighty force of nature remains untamed, wrecking man-made structures, creating new pockets of life. It's a landscape like no other, where nature's gifts inspire the world. As the last creatures remaining put on a final act in the magical wide-open wilderness of the Kruger National Park. The Kruger National Park has been called South Africa's Eden. The rugged, rocky landscape lies in a beautiful subtropical region known as the Lowveld. Over 145 species of mammal thrive in this breathtaking wilderness that spans 7,500 square miles, an area nearly the size of Israel. Most of it lies just 1,600 feet above sea level. These majestic rocky ridges rise from the ancient granite bedrock that dominates the western half of the park. In the east, large herds of zebra and wildebeest feed on the grassy plains that sprout up from the dolomite bedrock. The chocolate-colored rock is exposed by 6 major rivers that slice through the park. Here, beautiful gorges and ravines support nearly every type of reptile, including high concentrations of deadly Nile crocodiles. The Kruger Park is the largest natural refuge for mammals in the world. The South African National Parks team monitor the health of the ecosystem with the help of passionate scientists. Daily research is conducted throughout the park, but the northern reaches are most spectacular. The biodiversity is unrivaled in an area no larger than 2% of the reserve. These ancient valleys are home to the park's most impressive megafauna. For thousands of years, elephants shaped this landscape as they migrated across the wilderness in search of food and water. They disperse seeds as they move, multiplying the number and diversity of plant life. Some trees are thousands of years old, like this baobab forest, a signpost of elephant activity. The trees store water in their trunks, and their seed pods produce a nutritious superfood packed with vitamin C. A mysterious civilization lived near this forest over 500 years ago, surviving off the spoils of nature. Traces of their culture crown this hill at Tulamela, which means the place of giving birth. These stone-walled structures are all that's left of a once thriving community. African tribes hailing from the ancient kingdom of Mapungubwe moved to Great Zimbabwe and eventually dispersed into smaller chiefdoms like Tulamela. They were a Shona tribe, trading gold, animal skins and ivory with seafarers from the Middle East, Southeast Asia and China. They were ruled by an elusive figure who hid away from the public on this secluded hilltop. Commoners who passed the scrutiny of his personal informant were led into these partitioned chambers. Here, a personal diviner and herbalist guarded the chief's health and preserved his sanctity. Remnants of ancient rituals lie scattered in the area, like this artifact on a narrow cliffside overhang. It appears to be made from wood and clay and could be a sacred burial site. 2 skeletons were unearthed at Tulamela, but the rest of the tribe eventually dispersed. Drought may have forced the nomads to pack up and leave. The arrival of gun-wielding settlers in the 1800s fragmented many African tribes. They used local tribesmen to bolster their hunting parties, building their economy. They traded meat and beautiful leather goods made from wild animals, like these giraffe. One animal in particular turned humble hunters into proud millionaires. The African elephant was gunned down for its tusks. As the ivory trade boomed, the pearly white commodity became known as Africa's white gold. More than 90 tons were exported in 1855 alone, along with vast quantities of hide and horn. Elephants were hunted close to extinction. The British were eager to stake a claim in the burgeoning economy. By 1899, they had set up a military base on the banks of the Sabi River. Just 3 years later, James Stevenson Hamilton was appointed game warden of the newly established Sabi Nature Reserve. He befriended the local Tsonga, who helped him rid the park of criminals. They called him Skukuza, which means he who sweeps clean. By 1905, the government had relocated the Tsonga tribe to the nearby town of Hazyview, and their village was transformed into the headquarters of the newly established Kruger National Park. The camp was named Skukuza in honor of James Hamilton's efforts. By 1923, steam trains chugged through the park, signaling the birth of tourism in South Africa. Today, 3 museums, a library and a restaurant keep tourists entertained. Accommodation here ranges from quaint thatch roof huts to family chalets, and campsites for the more adventurous traveler. Staff living in the park enjoy a fully functioning town, including schools, sports grounds, and a golf course. But the Kruger's wildlife remains its biggest draw, especially the famed Big Five. Early hunters named a group of animals the Big Five because they were considered the most dangerous animals to hunt. The most elusive is the leopard. Their beautiful spotted coats were sought after by merchants trading with the East and worn as decorative clothing by mighty chiefs and kings of local tribes. Leopards are normally nocturnal, but they won't hesitate to hunt during the day when prey is on the move. Adaptability is paramount for solitary animals that are in constant competition with larger groups of predators, competing for the same prey. Lions were classified as vermin when the park was established, because they were competing for the antelope used in the meat and leather trade. Hunters shot them on sight, but they were often mauled to death by the powerful cats. Sadly, the king of the wild is still hunted for sport and medicinal potions used by mystics and witch doctors. But the Kruger Park does its best to protect these mighty cats from criminal elements. Lions are a keystone species, responsible for keeping animal numbers in check. And because the greater Kruger area is fenced in, they must be monitored. A system of adaptive management is used. It's a flexible approach that helps scientists interpret and manipulate the complex natural system. Radio collars are fitted to alpha males and females of the pride, and a beeping signal is emitted for up to 2 years. Their movements in the park are recorded daily, and radio telemetry helps scientists pinpoint their position. Tourists searching for lions should look out for telltale signs of danger from prey species, like these buffalo, another lethal member of the Big Five Club. A herd on the run is a dead giveaway that lions are on the prowl. Large lion prides must hunt daily to survive. When nighttime hunts are unsuccessful, the pride pushes on through the day to make a kill. But taking down a buffalo is no easy task. An adult buffalo can weigh 1,600 pounds. With its heavy upward curved set of horns, attacking a buffalo is like having a showdown with an oversized blender. The nervous herd sticks together, preparing for the assault. The dust stirred up by the buffalo disorientates the herd, momentarily giving the lions the upper hand. As panic sets in, it's anybody's game. The females spread out, flanking the herd, trying to flush a vulnerable animal from the seething mass of muscle. An inexperienced male breaks rank, but is checked by the angry buff. The herd now stands shoulder to shoulder. Safety in numbers is their strategy, and these hard-headed brutes are ready to deliver a bruising. They circle around the hunters, trying to maim or kill the assailants. Shaking a hungry pride of lions is no easy task. But the buffalo managed to split the pride, disabling the attack. They send a final warning as the lions start to tire. Without darkness and the element of surprise, the buffalo outwit the cats. But lions are not the only threat to buffalo. Bovine tuberculosis, contracted from domestic cattle on the park boundary, infiltrates the herds and also affects other members of the Big Five, including the ancient, majestic rhinoceros. The South African National Parks Organization has over 60 years of experience in game capture and translocation of big animal species. And they're taking an active stance in the fight against poaching and disease. They now use choppers and dart guns to get up close to dangerous animals, especially highly aggressive species like the black rhino. These majestic animals were romanticized by big game hunters for centuries, but were completely hunted out of the Kruger Park. The World Wildlife Fund was instrumental in saving the species. But poachers trading in rhino horn are still out to hunt black rhino, and they're easily identified in the bush. Black rhino mothers run in front of their young, so they can tackle any danger head-on. Their horns can grow over 2 feet long and are made of keratin, the same substance found in human fingernails. Despite the risk of attack, getting up close to large species is vital in understanding the physical effects borne on the animal by its environment. A team of professionals use darts made from ballistic syringes and hypodermic needles. The darts are filled with immobilizing drugs and are propelled from high-powered compressed air guns. On impact, a steel ball at the rear of the dart pushes the plunger of the syringe and injects the drug into the animal. The most effective drug is called M99, or etofine. It's 3,000 times stronger than morphine, and a single drop could kill a human. Darting puts animals under stress, but it's the most effective way to safely extract blood and tissue samples for research. But the M99 tranquilizer, designed to do good, has found its way into the black market. Evidence of the drug has been found at many rhino poaching crime scenes, causing concern over the scale of the poaching crisis. As poaching continues across Africa, other species are at risk of extinction. The white rhino is no exception. These rhinos are native to Africa, but are recognized as a species of global importance and appeal. So careful management of their numbers is vital. By the 1900s, only 50 white rhino remained in southern Africa. Some callous hunters bragged about shooting over 1,000 rhino each. But thanks to the efforts of Operation Rhino, the population rose steadily to over 20,000 animals. Despite the success, poaching continues throughout Africa. By 2016, rhino numbers had dropped considerably, with over 3 rhinos poached every day. breeding in captivity has seen little success. These rhinos prefer to mate in the wild. They've adapted unique survival techniques. White rhino mothers run with their baby in front of them, so they know the whereabouts of their calf at all times. Once darted, the chopper's pilot radios the ground crew. Every second counts for the vulnerable animal. They're more docile than black rhino and are more easily managed. White rhinos can walk while under sedation. A towel is placed over its eyes to keep it calm. Then a rope is tied to its horn. But the heavy beast is no pushover. A team of game management officers struggles with the calf, walking it towards the translocation container. The drugs temporarily mask its fight and flight instincts. But these thick-skinned creatures don't always follow game management rules. As the tranquilizer wears off, the men struggle to contain the dangerous animal. 4 men are no match for the power of a baby rhino. As the calf wins the tug of war, the towel falls from its eyes. The rangers look for a sturdy tree to anchor the angry rhino, finally regaining composure. The rhino's eyes are covered again, calming the animal. The exhausted men push on, finally loading the rhino for transit. It will be held in a quarantine camp, monitored for disease, and then relocated to another national park or private reserve. The final member of the Big Five is the African elephant. Prized for their ivory, hunters would shoot entire herds to extract the valuable tusks. But elephants quickly learned the dangers of guns. Many hunters were caught off guard and crushed by angry elephants. But to most hunters, the rewards outweighed the risks. They profited handsomely by selling collections of Africa's white gold. By the 1900s, the Kruger's elephants had been completely poached out. 10 elephants were found at the convergence of the Olifants and Letaba rivers in 1905. The formation of the park in 1926 helped restore the imbalance, and by 1958, the pachyderms had made a remarkable recovery. But in the 1970s, ivory prices soared again. And in just 10 years, poachers managed to slaughter half of Africa's elephants. Trade in ivory was eventually banned in 1989. By 1997, the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species of Fauna and Flora approved a one-time only sale of government stockpiles of ivory. By 2002, 30 tons of South African ivory had been sold from the Kruger Park. It helped fund lengthy research and conservation operations. And by 2008, the elephants' numbers were once again on the rise. Helicopter counts estimated 12,930 elephants in Kruger, a stable population. But numbers still had to be monitored. Elephants can spend up to 18 hours foraging, eating up to 600 pounds of food a day. Culling was the first attempt at population control, but was widely criticized. It decreases the number of elephants temporarily, but actually increases the rate of reproduction. Scientists now administer birth control. If a mass dying off of elephants occurs, the procedure can be reversed and the herd starts to breed naturally again, with few side effects. Because of habitat restriction, all wildlife management methods require human intervention. But there are some elements science simply can't tame. Nature's most destructive force has remained unshackled here for centuries. On the 6th of February 2000, staff at the Skukuza village were woken by the sound of pouring rain, but they could never have imagined the events that were about to unfold. An extratropical depression had formed over the Indian Ocean and was quickly gaining power. As it shifted inland towards the southern low-felt escarpment, 20 inches of rain fell in the principal basin area of the Crocodile and Sabi rivers within just 24 hours. People upstream from the park reported rivers rising to levels they had never witnessed before and sent warnings out to the Kruger. But even within the park, 11 inches of rain had fallen in just 48 hours, adding to the already swollen rivers. A chopper was deployed from Skukuza to investigate the scale of the flooding. The pilots were in for a shock. The Sabi River had swollen to levels unheard of before. Lateral flooding had begun. The Sabi River had burst its banks. It now threatened to wash tourist vehicles downriver and destroy park facilities. Intensive evacuation procedures began. But the onslaught of water continued relentlessly, and the raging river engulfed the camp. The river had become a sea of water, scouring the riverbed and sending towering waves 20 feet into the air. Roads and bridges were washed away as the military arrived to assist with rescue operations. Some staff were left stranded at the river's edge. They sat trapped in their vehicle for hours as dozens of hippos, crocodiles, spiders, and venomous snakes tried to outrun the advancing water. These staff members were rescued and rushed back to help at Skukuza, where things were taking a serious turn for the worse. Electrical power had been cut off, and over 40 houses at the staff village were gutted by the muddy crocodile-infested water. Thousands were shaken by the crushing force of the disaster. But the quick-thinking staff put fear aside and continued with rescue operations. Every single person was accounted for. But the greedy floodwaters had claimed their prize. Millions of dollars of private property was washed downstream. Buildings that had stood firm for decades were reduced to rubble within a matter of minutes. And vacations that took years to piece together were violently torn apart. Surprisingly, the survivors of the flood were most concerned about the well-being of wildlife in the park, and were happy to learn that most animals instinctively move to higher ground during floods. But there were many casualties. This unfortunate buffalo succumbed to the fury of the flood. After days of rain, the tropical disturbance eventually dissipated. Most people describe the disaster as the worst floods in living memory. But studies have revealed that it's a natural event that occurs every few hundred years. The disastrous floods were a welcome relief after animals had endured a long winter drought. As the gift from the sky soaked into the thirsty landscape, new growth sprouted up all over. Female antelope, anticipating the rains, gave birth to feisty little fawns that fattened up quickly on the sweet grass. And while these little miracles frolicked around above ground, others were being carefully stored under soft river sand. Silt from the floods gathered in eddies along the rugged lower reaches of the Olifants and Letaba rivers. The soft, warm deposits created the perfect incubator for eggs laid by scores of Nile crocodiles. The ancient rivers flowing through the Kruger Park are a lifeline to the animals living here. But they're also riddled with danger. The Letaba River supports an intricate web of life along its banks. Catfish, tigerfish, and tilapia swim in the deep water here, feeding on newly hatched fish, insects, and freshwater snails. The cool water glides past sandy beaches deposited by the catastrophic floods. They harbor one of Africa's ultimate predators, the Nile crocodile. They were hunted close to extinction by the 1960s. But this wild population was spared. International trade regulations eventually helped curb the slaughter, saving the species. Mature crocs breed in the deep water, and females burrow into the soft river sand to lay their eggs. But other, more sinister threats once drifted down this river. In 2008, a disease called pansteatitis wreaked havoc on this crocodile population. Pollution from mining operations upstream was believed to be the culprit. The crocodiles' immune systems were attacked, causing chronic inflammation. Fat deposits were most affected, making the crocs stiff and lethargic. Some drowned, others died of starvation. But the crocs have recovered. A crowded river means food is scarce. These reptilian predators have become master scavengers. The most dominant crocs kill and eat first, leaving what's left for subordinate reptiles. At first, the big croc is reluctant to part with his catch, but has eaten his fill. The younger predator's tenacity pays off, as it takes ownership of what remains of the kill. Every last shred of nutrition is consumed, balancing the river's ecology. But habitat destruction remains the ultimate killer. It's a struggle borne by other species in the park. African wild dogs normally travel over a 300 square mile area in search of prey. But confined areas restrict their breeding behavior, strangling population growth. They weigh just 48 pounds, but use as much energy as 2 grown men. They eat close to 8 pounds of meat per day to maintain top condition. This one pack could consume over 1,200 impala in a year. That's 3 kills per day. So they're always on the hunt. And they're super smart. They've become accustomed to running alongside tourist vehicles, perhaps in hope of flushing out unsuspecting antelope. It's a treat for tourists visiting the park. There's nothing quite as exhilarating as running with a pack of wild dogs. The nomadic dogs hunt daily, except for the 3 months of the denning season, when they use established underground burrows to protect the newborn pups. They all work to support the alpha female, who feeds her pups by regurgitating her own meal. If she's maimed or killed, other members of the pack step in to grow the pups to fully functioning members. Pack cohesion is key to their survival, but other much larger species do just fine living alone. Duke is one of the Kruger's animal legends, each of his tusks measuring 10 feet long. He was named after Thomas Duke, one of the park's first rangers, who worked in the reserve between 1903 and 1923. The big tusker roamed the southern part of the park for close to 55 years and gained international attention for his massive ivory tusks and gentle nature. He was a master of uprooting trees until he broke one tusk off while trying to uproot a heavy leadwood. Soon after, a collar was fitted to the elephant to monitor his movement. But on the 1st of October 2011, tragedy struck when rangers noticed the signal from Duke's collar had stopped moving. Section Ranger Niels van Wyk rushed to the scene. He followed the elephant's footprints through the bush, but he could tell the tracks were already a few days old. His heart felt heavy as his worst fears were confirmed. Duke, the gentle giant, lay on his side, silent and still. He had died 5 days earlier from natural causes. Duke's legacy lives on in videos and blogs uploaded to the internet by fans from across the globe in a final celebration of this majestic animal. His massive tusks were safely stored in the Kruger's vaults. But they may be the last tusks to reach 10 feet, as the Kruger's wildlife remains under siege by poachers. From a Battalier eagle's perspective, the Kruger's rolling hills remain pristine and untouched by the modern world. Nature's jewels still sparkle in the eyes of man. But now in celebration of their vibrant beauty, short-term gains no longer threaten their unscrupulous demise. It reflects man's place in this garden of life. Now ecotourism drives the scientific exploration into the vast unknown. Slowly unraveling the dynamic twists in the intricate web of life that sprawls across this wilderness and encapsulates the rest of the globe. Man may be calling a truce, but the struggle for life rages on for the roaring masses that roam the plains of this eternal battleground. Constantly refining innate abilities to navigate the many dangers that threaten their existence. As the days of killing for profit come to an end, humans have claimed their place as the ultimate keystone species, armed with the weapons to safeguard all life in this living museum. But nature reminds us of her unbridled power, releasing her fury despite attempts of human control. the Kruger National Park will continue to stand as a beacon of hope and a model for conservation, as it merges collective scientific knowledge to restore this Eden to its former glory. So generations far from our own find it, as it always has been, wild and free.